One. Just one. Just one.
If you take the same note all the way through,
So at some point, you're going to be right, aren't you?
That's all I needed.
Glenn, I'm not Glenn.
You got it in there? All right.
We know, Kenny, we know.
I just wanted to take just a second before we get started to just thank you guys so much for your generosity.
Generous people
Probably about, what, 2 weeks ago, Summer, our van started giving us some trouble. And the check engine light came on, and we had to take it in, and of course it was a big chunk of money. But you guys, I think it was almost exactly what we needed. So, but we really thank you all. So, anyway.
I feel like it needs more than just an anyway. It was.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe y'all could sing a little thank you song.
Get that music.
Glenn,
going.
can you start? No, that was a shocker. David Gibbs.
We were shocked,
He
yeah.
gave it to us on Wednesday after church. And actually, Ben wasn't here Wednesday night, and he gave it to me, and I was just like, I didn't even know what to say. So I took it home, and we got all the kids together because I wanted them to see, too, how God just provides.
She said, everybody come in here, I need to say something, and I thought I was in trouble.
He did. He tried to go out. I was like, no, you two. He went.
Thank you.
So I kind of laid it out and told them, and they were all just like, looks like, I can't believe it. I can't believe it's the exact amount. And then Ben, I just looked at him, and he's going, and I said, Ben, is there no response? He's like, I don't know what to say. So thank you all. That was a shock and a relief, really. It was.
Yeah.
There was a lot of us very concerned about it because David Gibbs was collecting.
Yeah.
And the Masters was starting this week.
Hey, and they're out of town.
And
They're out of town.
Oh, no, yeah, it's true.
How much did they give you, Summer?
It was
got
close to $25.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you'll. Us now, personally, that you all have all officially passed this course. Well, those of you who are here, apparently, if you're not here, you don't get a certificate. Part one, yeah. I know Ben said they can write their own names.
Hey, he's thankful, but not that thankful.
Okay, so with the Dickinson. All right, I'm done with that, Rob. All right, so we're going to start the video. We do have a lot to pack in tonight, but I want you guys to listen closely tonight. And if you have a pen or something to write on, write it down or get it in your mind, something that kind of stands out in this video here, because this kind of sums it all up. We're tying it together. And be prepared when this is over, we'll kind of share what stands out to us from this video. Yeah, and we, when we make our notes, we assign who's going to do what. And Ben said,
something that
I was like, you do this? He said, my goodness, what are you going to do? You're going to do nothing. So he said to start the video to put his name on it. So yeah. This is Ben's part. Start the video.
Generosity and focus toward others. How generous are you?
Sorry. Takes just a second.
Now, I just have my name on it.
welcome to session 4 of The Genius of Generosity. And I've been thinking since we were together last time, how does God measure generosity? Have you ever thought about that? I mean, if there was a measuring stick and you wanted to know, how does God measure if you're really generous or not? I remember earlier in the book I shared sort of my journey, and early in my journey I was giving 30% of my income away, and I thought like I was one pretty generous person. And what I realized was my heart wasn't in the right place, and because of how much I was making and the margin that I had, it really wasn't much of a sacrifice. And so how does God measure generosity? Well, if you will, open your books, chapter 4, where it says discussion and reflection, and then open your Bible and to Luke chapter 21, verses 1 to 4. And in one snapshot, one brief snapshot, the creator of the universe in human form, the God-man Jesus, will find himself looking over to a woman. And the woman is dropping money in a box. The situation is many people, wealthy people, are dropping large amounts of money in the box, and I'm sure generously giving and caring and wanting to honor God with what they have, obeying the law, doing what God wants them to do. But I mean, when you think the Son of Man stops and says, wait, disciples, right there, you see that? Come over, I got to show you something. And follow along in Luke chapter 21, the first 4 verses. This is what it says. As Jesus looked up, he saw the rich putting their gifts into the temple treasury. He also saw a poor widow put in 2 very small copper coins. Truly, I tell you, he said, this poor widow has put more in than all the others. All these people gave their gifts out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on. Now, do you understand what he just said here? She gave more than they gave. And at first look, I'm thinking to myself, now wait a second, Jesus, your math is not very good. They gave a lot more money, and she gave 2 small copper coins. How can you say that she gave more? Well, see, God doesn't measure generosity the way we do. God doesn't measure generosity by the amount that we give, but by the amount of our sacrifice. I mean, let me just lay this out for you as clearly as I can. Let's say there's 2 people. And let's say they make exactly the same amount of money. Let's make them good salary, $75,000 each. They live in exactly the same home, exactly the same number of children, exactly the same expenses. Okay? I mean, they're completely parallel. One person gives 4% of their salary. The other person gives 15% of their salary. Who's the most generous? See, we don't like to say it like that, but on the exact same salary, it takes more sacrifice if you give more. And what Jesus was saying is, at the end of the day, it's not how much you give. Some of us can give thousands and thousands of dollars. It has zero impact on our lifestyle. Some people give a few dollars or maybe hundreds of dollars in the course of a year. It has tremendous impact on how they actually live. The size of the gift is not how God measures generosity. It's the size of the sacrifice. So with that, how are you doing in your journey of generosity? Are you a generous person? When's the last time you gave of your money or your time or something that you possess that it was hard? I mean, it was a sacrifice. Your life was going to be different because you gave that. Jesus is teaching us that's when you're beginning to hit pay dirt. In fact, you may have seen the graphic in this chapter. It's called the Generosity Staircase. I'd like you to turn back a few pages, and I want you to look at that because this is the big lesson. This is the takeaway, literally, of this chapter, but this is the major takeaway of the whole book. I remember doing a conference, and it was a conference with a number of very, very wealthy people for a ministry, and I taught on the genius of generosity. And in the very first session, I told them, this is not about money. And this group of very wealthy people rolled their eyes and said, yeah, right. In fact, it was a fundraising event. So it was pretty audacious, I suppose, to talk about the genius of generosity, and even more audacious to say, I really want you to know this is not about money. And, I got some little snide comments, and they were giving me a hard time, but we knew each other. They loved me, I loved them. And they said, okay, yeah, sure. Well, when I got to this teaching, I remember a lady coming up afterwards, And she looked me in the eye, and she was a generous woman. And she was a woman who'd given very generously out of great wealth to many organizations, her church, and many people. And I think she really felt in her heart, I've been very generous. And she looked me in the eye, and she said, you know, when you said this isn't about money, I thought to myself, and I want to give it. So I wasn't bad or mad at you. But she goes, I thought to myself, you got to be kidding. It's all about money. When you got done today, I just realized it's not about money at all. You see, the graduate course in generosity is the way the most generous being in all the universe, God himself, chose to bring his greatest gift to us. And you see that staircase, and you look at the bottom, and the Magi come, and what do they bring? They bring money. Those are your training wheels. I mean, if I can't give my money, I'll never give my time. You know, and if I don't give my time, I'll never give my reputation. I mean, God chose, and I love the parallel here. With each level of giving, there's an extended or deeper level of revelation. You might, actually draw a line on that staircase, and on the left side of that line, write deeper revelation. And then on the other side, draw a line on the staircase and write deeper sacrifice. As the sacrifice and generosity goes up, God reveals more and more of himself to those people. And so this whole series has not been about how to get you to give more money. This is about how smart, genius people live who want intimacy with God, who want their life to count, who want to end up standing before a holy God and Jesus himself saying, well done, thou good and faithful servant. And so it begins with my money. And so of course I need to give the first portion of a tithe, but I want to be on a generosity journey. I want to learn to give when there's a real cost. And that starts with my money, and then it goes to my time. Where does your time go? We can be generous with our money, but stingy with our time. And so we find that the shepherds give their time. I mean, they left the sheep. There was risk. They took their time. But as the Magi saw a star, what did the shepherds get to do? They were the first ever to tell the news of the Savior of the world has come. They were the first evangelist. And then it goes beyond that to Joseph, who gives his reputation. I mean, we read these little stories in the Bible as though, oh, these are sort of fictional people, and, I guess that was sort of hard. I mean, put yourself in Joseph's place. They thought he was a fool. You're going to marry this girl who's pregnant? I mean, don't you have, you know what kind of girl she is? Do you understand what we think you are? Not only you're not very smart, he's lost his reputation. He was willing to give up what people think about him. He was willing to release that, to obey God, and to love Mary, and to fulfill God's plan. Why? He believed. He believed what the angel said. You know what? I've met some doctors that have been willing to do that, and they've walked away from a very lucrative opportunity in a hospital that does abortions. And they say, you know what? I will not work in this hospital because it does abortions. And they have had their reputation smeared, and their careers go in a different direction. I've known business people who have stepped up. I know one man in particular at one of the most major corporations in all of America, and an event occurred, and it violated an ethical standard, and he said, we can't do that. We've said we wouldn't. But the discipline would have been to very high-ranking officials. And the CEO and the board said, well, we can't, I know we have that principle, but we can't follow it now. We'd lose some of our best people. And he said, well, you just lost one of them. And he resigned. He was willing to give up his reputation and his career. That's generosity. Or you get to marry, she gave up her future. I mean, she was a young gal. She had a heart. She had a dream. There was a picture of a young Jewish boy in sort of our version of a picket fence and what her dreams would be like. And she said to God, be it unto me according to your word. My life's a stewardship. It's not just your money. It's not just your time. It's not just your reputation. It's my life, my future. God, whatever you want, I'm yours. And what did Mary get to experience? She got to experience being the mother of Jesus. She got to raise the Son of God. She got to look into his eyes. She got to have experiences and intimacy with God like few people ever have or ever will, because she was willing to give her future. It goes on beyond, and Jesus gave his life. It says, Mark 10:45, for even the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister or to give his life a ransom for many. Jesus would actually teach you and me as his followers, unless a grain of wheat fall into the earth and die, it remains by itself alone. But if it dies, it bears forth much fruit. Do you understand? When God's evaluating generosity, what he's asking is for your life, beyond your life, your most precious possession. Recently, my wife went through a bout with breast cancer. And I had to walk through, am I willing with a good attitude? I don't want to lose my wife. I've had a couple of my kids go into careers and take some steps that had to do with ministry and going far away from me and living in a different city. Are you willing to release your life and your most precious possessions and say, I so believe that you're good, God. I believe that you're a God of grace and glory. I believe that no good thing will you withhold from those who walk uprightly. That Psalm 84:11 has been the bedrock of generosity in my life. So let me ask you, how generous are you? Really? I mean, we can answer these questions in this book, but at the end of the day, the journey is a Romans 12:1 moment for you. You know what God really wants? I mean, you thought this was about money. You thought this was about proportions. You know what God really wants? He wants you to say, Father, it'll show up in my money. It'll show up in my time, my reputation, my future. It's all out there. But I offer my body to you as a living sacrifice in view of your grace, holy and acceptable to you. All that I am, all that I have, this is your reasonable service of worship. This is what you really want from me. Have you ever done that? That's the bedrock of generosity. That's the genius. That's the give. And it'll be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over back into your lap. It's not an act. It's not something that you do. Generosity is the way that you live when the Spirit of the living God inside of you is given the freedom to express his love and generosity and focus toward others. And like everything, it's a habit. We unconsciously have habits where we live for ourselves. And so application number 1 for the next 21 days, okay, every day, I want you to do one specific act of generosity. I mean, you can look at that staircase and you can decide it can be money, it can be reputation, it could be your future, I don't know. For 21 days, just get a calendar out and just write on it, maybe even in a code so no one knows. One small act of generosity every day for 21 days, and it'll change how you begin to think. The last thing I want you to do is, if you haven't done that project, if you haven't come together and said, who are we going to help? And don't make it so big and so bureaucratic that you never get around to it. Maybe it's just a widow at the church. Maybe it's a single mom. Maybe it's a young guy going away to college and you just get together and pay for his books. Maybe it's a homeless situation and you decide, as a group in our church did recently, they made sandwiches. And they went on Saturday to a park where all the homeless people were, and it was a small group, and they made sandwiches and served lemonade and just sat and talked and treated them like real people with real dignity. And then they came back and they shared with us that God did more in them than it did in those homeless people. And I just have to tell you, that's my heart for you in this whole series. That's God's heart for you. He longs for you to be generous for your good and for his glory. And the way God measures generosity is very simple. It's not the size of the gift. It's the size of the sacrifice. And that's in fact the very first question I want you to discuss. If in fact that's true, what might sacrificial generosity look like for you? Are there any steps you sense God is asking you to take to make your generosity more sacrificial? Why don't you discuss that question and then act on it? Thanks for giving me the privilege of being in your group, and I believe God's got a great plan for your life.
All right, so did anything stand out to you? Or what stood out to you?
I like the 21 day deal.
Yeah.
It takes a while before it happens.
It does.
I want to do that. And doesn't have to be something big.
Yeah, it could be just simple things or whatever. And we've got a sheet there, and we'll get there in just a second. What else stood out?
Just how it's a matter of growth. You know, forming that habit. I think it also, even wanted to parallel with what, you know, Stan's been preaching. Just, you know, it's not just giving money, but it's that whole picture, growing in, you know, standing for the truth and, you know, preaching the truth and revealing that truth and being someone that presents the truth to others and growing in that and making that sacrifice as well, that, you know, you're not just saying I'm a Christian, but you're living that life out. And as you grow and it gets tougher, you're making that sacrifice. Even though it's tough, you're still presenting the true gospel back, not something that's easy for people to digest. That's just really a sign of growth.
Yeah.
I love that really.
You know, being a Christian costs everything. You can't kind of be partial. If you come to him, he owns it all. And putting that into practice is the hard part.
We was talking about, you know, those businessmen that they sacrifice their reputation. Pastors sacrifice their reputation if they stand on truth and lead people in truth. And, you know, that if they're leading the truth, the church in truth, when you see things like this, you see the result of, you know, this lady that's going to be helped.
Right.
You know, the church coming together to help you guys.
Yeah.
You know, all those things. It's sacrificing for the body itself. It's just really just makes you think that, you know, we can stick money in a pot like the Pharisees did. You know,
Yeah.
but really that lady that was, you know, giving all she had
Yeah.
was the one.
Yeah.
And one thing that he said, and the way that he phrased it, it kind of stood out to me this time. I've seen this a few times this week, but this time it kind of, you know, lit up, was that, I don't exactly remember how he said it, but to just free up the Lord to work through you. And just the way he said it, to free him, we're holding him captive in a sense. And if we will just open up and let him use us, it's not like he's going to drain us dry and leave us out, you know? And it's just, if we can grasp that and just start putting it into practice and work up that staircase, and it's kind of what you were saying, Kenny, the deeper revelation, the deeper the sacrifice, the deeper the revelation too. And I think that's a reward in and of itself.
And I think part of it goes back to that leather gasket. You know, you have to
You have to wet that gasket.
wet it first, and then you get the abundance of I guess what's there, instead of taking it before.
Something that stood out to me, actually was the last thing I wrote down, but generosity is not something that you do, it's the way that you live.
Right.
And that is a big old ball there.
Yeah.
Boy, how powerful is that? That I would be recognized through the way that I live.
Yeah.
As a generous person. And back what Kenny was saying too, sacrifice just really strikes me. For a non-minister,
A layman.
church administrator, just as a church member, to dwell on that as a sacrifice. I think most people do what they can, but do they move it to a point where it's a sacrifice?
Yeah.
And so that's certainly food for thought.
Yeah.
When it convicted, you talk about a lot of people think, hey man, I get 10%, I'm doing great. And
Yeah.
he himself said, I thought, man, I'm a great Christian, but it's always the overall righteousness. And I want to get different to you.
But it's also everything too. It's not the money. It's the whole thing. Is your life a sacrifice the same way Christ sacrificed for us?
Yeah.
I also put, I'm God's, so I'm gonna want to be generous.
Yeah. If we grasp that we are his, everything we have is his, even us.
Yeah.
It's true that we shouldn't hold back.
Okay. Grab your do you have your discussion question page?
That's like, yeah.
Or your book, Misty?
This is the discussion, what does it say on
This is
here?
my book.
Discussion questions. It's the one with the,
And
nice try there,
all
Rob.
those ladies without bad mouthing that.
All right, number one, what he asked at the end, God measures generosity not by the size of the gift, but by the size of the sacrifice. What might sacrificial generosity look like for you? And are there any steps you sense God is asking you to take to make your generosity more sacrificial? Anyone right off?
What makes me think of the 21 days, because I think a generous life is a practiced thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So, if we were, or if I took that 21-day challenge and did it, then I might be able to evaluate and see more clearly what a generous life is.
Yeah. It's one thing to spend the last 4 weeks learning about it. It's another thing to go out and intentionally practice it and try to make it a part of your life. And it has to be intentional. I mean, you all do generous things all the time without even thinking about it. Truly, I think that you all do, or you're good at that. But to intentionally do it, it just kind of puts it, it's just a little different in your head. It makes you think more of what you're doing because of what, I guess it kind of puts your focus back on him. Because of what he's done for me, I will do this for someone else.
Yeah. Or this is not mine. How can I use
Yeah.
it? I don't know.
Or the lesson that Chip learned from his friend that in Dallas there, that
Yeah, John Samuel, yeah.
an intentional thing that Chip learned a great deal from.
Yeah.
So,
I have loved that story because that just, he had to think of John Saville every single day. And that was the you know, that,
And some of that, what's his last name?
Saville?
Saddle. I mean, who knows, I don't know how long ago that's been, but look how many people have
Yeah.
been affected by that act. That at one time it was just Chip and just John.
That is true.
And I mean, now we're affected by it.
Yeah.
And-
He talks,
and God can multiply it, you know.
Chip, I don't think he did in this, maybe it's in the sermon series, he talks about John Saville, who's, you know, he's in heaven now, and he said, I can imagine the people, the extravagant feast that he's at, and people say, you know, that $20 that you had Chip give, my kids got saved because of that. And he didn't mention this, but to take it even further is to say, that led to a series that I was in and changed my I mean, I think you're right, it's a ripple effect for generations to come.
Yeah, for sure. You?
Is anybody else?
Anyone else?
Before we move on. Okay. Turn in, if you have your Bibles, and I hope you do. Turn to 2 Corinthians. This is in your discussion, on your discussion page 2. 2 Corinthians 8, and I think in the discussion it says verses 2 through 4, but we're going to do 2 through 5. So, who is there that wants to read it? Glenford. Will you read it? 2 through 5.
Moreover, brethren, we make known to you the grace of God bestowed on the churches in Macedonia, that in a great trial of affliction, the abundance of their joy and their deep poverty abounded in the riches of their liberality. For I bear witness that according to their ability, yes, beyond their ability, they were free and willing, imploring us with much mercy, much urgency, that we would receive the gift and that the fellowship of the ministry to the saints. And not only as we had helped, but they first gave themselves to the Lord and then to us by the will of God.
Okay, what is that, New American Standard? So who has, let's read in a couple different verses because I want to get this in stuff of purpose. New King James. So who has something besides that one? What do you,
New American,
okay, will you read it?
2 through 5.
Yeah, 2 through 5.
That in a great ordeal of affliction, their abundance of joy and their deep poverty overflowed in the wealth of their liberality. For I testify that according to their ability, and beyond their ability, they gave of their own accord, begging us with much urging for the favor of participation in the support of the saints. And this, not as we had expected, but they first gave themselves to the Lord and to us by the will of God.
Okay. All right, does anybody else have any, does anybody have the New Living Translation?
The ESV.
Read that one, and then take that down for
For in severe test and affliction, their abundance of joy and their extreme poverty have overflowed in a wealth of generosity on their part. For they gave according to their means, as I can testify, and beyond their means of their own accord, begging us earnestly for the favor of taking part in the relief of the saints. And this not as we had expected, but they gave themselves first to the Lord, and then by the will of God to us.
the. Okay, all right, so keep your Bibles open. The question that goes along with that is, what words or phrase from this passage would you most like to be true about your giving and generosity? So, I am my mother's daughter, so I like to make lists, and those of you who have been in her Bible studies, her ladies' Bible studies, she's always said, did anybody else make a list? I made a list. So I thought, before we even say what phrase for ourselves to make it personal, let's just list out what phrases describe these people that he's talking about, Even just, let's just get the phrases up there first of all before we pick out the ones that you want to describe you. So, y'all call them out.
Beyond their ability.
Okay, giving beyond their ability.
Abundance of joy.
Because,
Like verse 4 says, they beg to participate.
yeah,
Please let us have.
yeah,
They first gave themselves to the Lord.
yeah.
Abundance of joy.
Oh, you're still on.
Make it slow.
I know. A-B-U-N. And then begged to give, really?
They beg, let us help.
Yeah.
Beyond their means.
Then there was, what did you say?
They first gave of themselves to the Lord.
What?
Gave themselves
Where's Linda?
first to God. I know, we need Linda.
They gave themselves first to God.
I thought that was an important part of that whole. And in fact, I think that's in verse 5. That's why I was like, we got to get verse 5 in there. All right. What did you say, Sharon?
Beyond their means.
Gave beyond their means.
Not a good point there. How does any of the other stuff happen if you haven't given yourself to God?
Yeah. Because you get worn out too. You can only give so long in your own strength before you wear out.
Is that it?
What else? Is there anything else, Lady Goon?
They gave themselves first to the Lord.
Yeah, he's got that. Gave themselves first. Yeah. You're even behind Ben on that one.
Yeah, you're way behind.
I don't want us to miss either. They're listed with abundance of joy, though, was that they were also experiencing a severe test of affliction and extreme poverty.
Yeah,
So it's not just that they were joyful, but they were joyful in the midst of affliction and poverty.
yeah. That's what, and the New Living says, though they've been going through much trouble and hard times, their wonderful joy and deep poverty have overflowed in rich generosity. So you even said their joy, but the joy came from their, from the poverty and from being generous. Okay,
Same principle as the woman with the 2 coins in.
yeah, that's true. Anybody from this side?
Well, that just made me think, not so much of a phrase in here, but he was talking about, freeing the Holy Spirit to act. in
Yes.
you. But really and truly, none of this happens unless the Holy Spirit acts first in you, because this is not a natural thing.
That's
for
true.
people. We don't give in trouble,
Yeah.
in stress.
Right.
Unless God moves in us
Right.
to be generous.
Yeah, it is kind of our natural, the old man type nature to protect me first. And even a couple weeks ago when he was talking, he was in such a bad mood and the last thing he wanted to do was to be generous, but he did out of obedience and it turned him around. So, it is hard to give when you're in a bad mood. Did you write that up there?
No.
Phrase it for him in a way to phrase it.
Enabled by the Spirit.
Yeah.
To be generous.
Spirit driven, yeah.
Spirit driven. There you go. That's 2 words.
Just by spirit.
Spirit driven. It's a good thing this is the last one. One thing that I had listed out here too was they counted it a privilege to give. Because of, counted it a privilege? Counted Absolutely. Okay, so does anybody else have any other ones before we call it?
Yes.
Okay,
And I don't want to sound flippant or anything, but the question is, which of these words or phrases would you most like to be true?
right. That's why I said, let's list them now. That's the next thing.
Well, as Christians, true believers, every word, every phrase, all of it.
Yeah, that's true.
If you wrote down all of it, you wouldn't have a list.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
So
I'm glad this
makes
is
it-
the last one. I'm just kidding. No, that is true. We should say all of them. We should want equally all of those to be true of us.
But
Oh,
there
boy,
is-
that really ruined my next
there-
question.
There is a psychological thing that occurs as a cumulative effect of all of that. When you give, you feel better.
Mm-hmm.
Poor, rich, middle, it doesn't matter. When you give, you feel better.
Isn't that neat how God worked that out?
Yeah.
For our
in
good.
Whatever way you give, it can
Yeah.
be money, it can be time, it can be teaching, it can be
Yeah.
this, that, or the other. In my personal experience, you may or may not believe this, but I always, for all those years I was in front of an audience, I felt like I was giving something.
Mm-hmm.
I always left feeling better than I did when
Yeah.
I went in. And when we give, we feel better.
Yeah.
And that's what that's all about.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Okay, so look at this list, and obviously we should want all of those to be reflective of us. So maybe instead of saying which one do you want to most reflect, why don't you answer the question which one does at this point, where you are on this journey, which one reflects you now?
I'm not saying a word.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Or which one, let's say which one you want to work on. Any way you want to look at it. Keep that passage in mind. Look at that list. And see which way what you need to work on. Because it is a journey. It's a journey, and we're not going to get it all right all the time. But we can definitely strengthen those ones that need to be strengthened. Okay, back to you, Ben.
So on your 21-day challenge, the papers in front of you, a little slip of paper, yeah. We're going to, what am I doing here? We'll get to that in a second. So for right now, just turn it over on the back side. And we're gonna make some lists. So on question, is this right? 3 and 4.
Yeah.
All right. So just on real quick on number 3, the Bible says that God loves a cheerful giver. How would you assess the cheerfulness of your giving? And what could you do to help your giving be more of an act of worship? So I don't know if you want to, let's say like your giving's 1 through 10. How would you assess your cheerfulness of your giving? Could you write that somehow and write it down? Are you cheerful when you give, or are you holding on to it like I do sometimes?
Hey, Ben, I heard a preacher say one time he watched his fellow put some money in the offering. He watched it go all the way down.
There it goes.
Or hesitate.
There it goes, yeah. So how cheerful are you? Kind of rate it, and we'll say 1 through 10. Are you a 3, or are you, kind of in the middle of 5, or are you, pretty happy when you give? Okay, everybody have that? Rob, write it down. All right, number 4, and then kind of reflect on that. Ponder about it some more later on. What could you do to help your giving be more of an act of worship? Okay, number 4. Would somebody read James 1:17? Misty. That was the Lord.
Lloyd.
James. Sorry, I should have asked you sooner.
New Testament.
New Testament,
1:17.
1:17.
Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, who does not change like shifting shadows.
As you reflect on your life today, what are you most grateful for? List these. Oh yeah, on the back. So we're going to take a couple minutes. I'm with you. So on the back, under your rating, we're going to take a few minutes, and we're going to I just want you to reflect back maybe on we'll say 2020 as a whole up to the present, and just think about that year, you know, how it's been, and what you're most grateful for. How, I guess,
Not even most grateful for. What are the things that you're grateful for
yeah.
in
What are you
for the past
grateful
year?
for in the past year? And if we go too long and you get down to
The air.
the air that we breathe, then we'll know that we're good.
Oh no, let's see what happened about it. What did he say, David?
That was Oscar, not me, I didn't say it.
His parents, Mr. Browning?
Yes, that's what he said.
Uh-huh.
All right, go.
I'm glad I didn't get the COVID cooties.
You have to write it down.
Write it down.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You don't say it out loud.
Because you're a man of the cloth, doesn't mean
I
you
wasn't
want to.
thinking that.
I get it, it's just,
Do you need anything else? Just a Misty and Ben. And Ben.
is that capital one?
The AV squad.
Yeah, I asked you next year.
Are you calling for LED?
No. Extra points if you say pastor's daughter.
The teachers.
Yeah. Leaders.
The leaders, excuse me, leaders. Yes, ma'am.
You're supposed to be writing these down too, are you?
Yeah.
How many do you want?
Till it's filled up.
Call them up down,
No cheating. I was talking to Misty. There you go. We have come to the air we breathe. All right, so you could probably keep going, but let's stop. Did you get a good list? Yes?
What'd you put on yours, Rob?
number one.
Okay, next.
Because Missy wrote friends, and I was like, I ain't got no friends. She's like, you got Ben? I was like, oh, that's right.
The one friend, the one friend.
I just am thankful for God just bringing me from where I was, 2 years ago to here, and it was just pretty much like, all right, God, I have nothing left. I'm completely trusting you, and it was completely just like, you brought me back, I'm gonna trust you with whatever you, and he has just blessed me
Yeah.
with friends and church and
Friend.
just saying, what?
Friend.
Friend, blessed you with
Not
friend.
friends,
Yeah,
friends.
sorry, no S on there. But, it's just amazing,
Yeah.
Even that's a picture of when you free him to work through you. It's for your good, right? Even in little things, not that, I don't know what your life was like really before you got back up here, but from what you've said before, it's even a better life. It's not like, went from one kind of life to another. It's transformed and it's better.
no, it's completely better.
And that's because you just let him take control.
It's amazing in the sense of, he got rid of all the stuff
Yeah.
to where I had to depend on him, and I feel like, why did I even have that stuff?
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
You know?
That's so good. Yeah.
And that's like,
Yeah.
what was that? What was that thing?
Yeah.
Slow.
Yeah. Anyone else? What's some things you put down?
Well, I put this one down as a joke, I put toilet paper.
It's true.
Last year, we were all.
Yeah.
That is true. That's not a joke.
That's true, yeah. What else?
Well, this time last year, we had planned a new job for me and a move here, and then all of a sudden, the job was shut down, and where were we gonna be able to get the house, and was I gonna be able to start the job, and it just all came together.
Mhm.
We got a contract on the new house, and the sale of the old house fell through.
Oh,
Mm.
Yeah.
So we were facing,
Mhm.
it was a little stressful.
yeah.
And a new buyer came in, and it was just,
That's very stressful.
Yeah. Anybody else? I put a new van. We got a new van.
Oh, yeah.
What, February?
On your birthday, on your 40th.
On my birthday.
On his 40th birthday, you got a
Oh.
minivan, and then we
Had to go
it's all
buy a van on my
frozen.
birthday. Just sit there for
4 hours.
all day long, and I had a terrible headache. But we got a new van. Our old van was it's pretty bad, wasn't it? Anyway, so we got a new van.
I put Amazon.
That's a bad word in our house. You deliver something.
Yeah.
Oh, that is true. That is true.
Anything else?
I put food.
Food, yeah. Good food.
I have been amazed over this last year, because if you listen to the news, you hear all the scary things, that are happening for a lot of people. And I'm not discounting it, but in light of all that, I've really seen God's protection over our family and all the things that we've been involved with, we had stability in our jobs, and we had, probably, I guess, the most unstable thing for me was like Cornerstone, and that ended up being very stressful, but being able to be a part of that and to watch our whole school community be able to be in person and to eat absolutely every step of the way through assistance that the government was handing out that a private Christian school would never ever get, and it helped keep us going and afloat this whole year, and it's just been, just to be a part of that. And then I'm put down that I was thankful for having a lack of fear with COVID.
Yeah.
Because I've watched so many people, it's just like controlled their lives,
Yeah.
and just thankful for that. And then I I'm really thankful we found you guys, that there was that change for us in the year. And that, that you all are like just a community of like-minded believers that, is really what we needed in this time of our life. And so, I'm really happy to be here.
Good. Okay, so I would, if you can, just keep it in, as you think of things, just write it down on there. But 21-day challenge, 21 days, be generous to someone, and I would go so far as to say, make it a sacrifice in some way. But 21 days, write it down, or if you're super organized and you already know, you can, like ahead of time, you can write 21 different things to do. I couldn't do that, but I don't think. Some of it I could, but some I
And why don't, if you guys don't care, you know, because this is our last night doing this, but maybe the Sunday nights to come for a few Sundays, let's just maybe share something we've done and experience, because that'll encourage us to keep it pressing on.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you will, if you haven't already figured it out, you will do these things, and then you will get a return on that. And I always think that that's so neat to watch how you give, and then you get back, you know, flowing in your lap. So it's encouraging for one thing, and it helps to build you too, because you see, it's something that you see. So anyway, keep it, write it down, and then we will, that's a good idea to talk about how it's affecting us. Okay.
That was one thing that I meant, and I skipped over in the beginning, was to see if you all, within the last 2 weeks since we've met, if you all had done any kind of little generosity type thing like we've been telling the stories of every week. And I thought I would give you a chance to do that. And then I told Ben, I said, these people have been so generous on big levels, because not only did you guys do that for us, but you did that for our other group generosity project. You also did, for those of you ladies in the Bible study, took up a big love offering for Mom, and she's going to take me shopping, so the ripple effect. No, she's not. But, I mean, there have been, just within the last 2 weeks, you guys have done big, generous things, and it blows me away that it didn't dwindle down to where you got tired of doing it, or, you know, not cheerfully, because I feel like it was a cheerful thing. Okay. Yes.
I just figured out if we do, those of us here do one thing a day for the next 7 days, by this time next week, there'll be 98 accidents.
Oh, man.
Just at this point.
Just from this group. That's, yeah. Good math, Dad.
Well, that's a pastoral ministry.
Yeah.
He said all that time to figure it out.
He's got his tablet back there.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to do a little council time for you all who have done Awanas. This is a council time here. Yeah. This is your life, this glass. God has blessed you, and you've been content, and you have given, and you have seen that his word is true. You give, and he returns to you the measure in which you give. And in fact, you like to give. You love it. You give often, except maybe sometimes if you're in a bad mood, you're not feeling it that day, or when the bills start to pile up, you might take a break, but then you get back to it, and you see how good he's been to you. Now, we've been through a course that hopefully has changed your perspective, and now we see that we have a choice. We can settle for this life, or we can have this new choice, and we can give and have him bless us, or we can continue to give out and watch as he blesses us so much that he doesn't drain us dry, but the more that we give, he gives it abundant and overflowing. So if I were to ask you, if you have the choice to continue before this course, giving little bits here and there, like every one of us have done, and then receiving those little blessings from God, would you stay there, or would you want to move to that life of abundance and overflowing, where we've learned that everything really is God's anyway? Are you willing to step out in that belief and to really grasp that and move on with that. The choice, I feel like there is a choice before you now. And you know, you're giving in God's blessing. It's not like you're going to lose your salvation if you stop, if you just keep this life. But there's so much more right at your fingertips. Which choice will you make from tonight moving forward? Now, also in front of you all, you have the little staircase that we made, these little laminated staircases. And I know they're small and maybe a little hard to read, sorry about that. But keep this with you. This is to remind you that generosity truly is a journey. So look at that. And if you look at the very first stair, it's your money. And that's where we stop usually. We think of generosity as, maybe we'll go up to your time, because I think even in the beginning when I said, what does it mean to you? We talked about being time that you give and money that you give, you know, also things, possessions, but sometimes we'll make it up to that second stair. But look at that stair step and think, reflect to yourself, where are you on this staircase? And where do you want to be? Now I have that written out real easy. Where do you want to be? But when I thought of that, where do I really want to be? Do I really want to be where I'm willing to give my most precious possession? Can I give up Ben or my children for him? That's something to really think about. Is that where you want to be? It's easy to say that's where I want to be willing to give anything for him. But compared to where you are, and don't let it bog you down. Let it be something to catapult you up that staircase. Give and you will receive. Your gift will return to you in full, pressed down, shaken together to make room for more, running over and poured into your lap. The amount you give will determine the amount you get back. The mirrors that you have in front of you, it's a little magnet. You could put it on your refrigerator or anywhere. You can rip it off and put it in your purse or your pocket or whatever. But it's just to remind you that the more that we grow in this, we are like little mirrors of the generosity of the King. So let that be a reminder to you. And Chip says, I think it's in the book, he ends this whole series by saying, that's life in the kingdom. All of this is life in the kingdom here. And it's pure genius. And if you act on this, if we take this and we adopt this lifestyle, it will not just change our life. It will truly change our world, of those people around you and just the whole world, your world. You have that power to do that if we can adopt this and really take hold of it and take those first few steps. All right, I'm praying.
All right, let us pray. God, I thank you for this study, and I pray that you would use it to change our lives and our livelihood and the way that we think about who you are and what we have and how it all is yours. And help us to change our mindset about those things that we hold on to, and to be generous to others and to look for opportunities and ways that we can affect other people in our lives. In your name I pray, amen.
Amen.
Right quick.
Hey guys, this is Pastor Stan, and just want to take a second to say thanks for watching. I trust that our time together is beneficial to you, that God's using His Word to make a difference, that He's challenging you, that He's encouraging you, that He's convicting you, that He's changing you. Whatever He needs to do His work in you, that's a great encouragement to us. If you could let us know that would be encouraging also. Oh, and by the way, I hope you're in church somewhere. If you've not fixed yourself in a local church, let me encourage you to do that. You need that fellowship. You need that accountability. You need those ministry opportunities. So get yourself in church if you're not already there. If you live in the area, we'd love to have you visit with us. That'd be a great joy to us as well. We're at 19175 Woodland Hills Road in Abingdon, Virginia. Just come in. Our services are Sunday morning at 10:30, Sunday night at 6 o'clock, and Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. In any one of those times, you'd be counted a very special visitor. So I hope you can do that. Let me encourage you also to pray for us. Would you do that? Would you ask God to use us, make a difference in us? keep us clean, keep us on the road to righteousness, and to be fruitful in His kingdom. Again, just want to tell you that we're glad you're here. Feel like you're part of the family. Some of you watch so often, it's like you're here with us already. So we love you, pray for us, and hope to see you next time.